Welcome to Your College Bound Kid,
a podcast for parents, college counselors, students, and anyone who wants a weekly deep dive into the world of college admissions.
Hi, I'm Susan, and I'm a college counselor and have read applications for a small liberal arts college and 2 research universities. My twins are recent college graduates.
I'm Lisa, and I'm a clinical psychologist and college counselor. I have a daughter in college, a daughter in high school, and a son in middle school. After 30 years in Chicago, we recently moved to North Carolina.
My name is Mark. I'm a college coach in Atlanta and the parent of 2 daughters. Karis, a graduate of Davidson College, and she is the founder of the Spanish tutoring company, SpanishHelpToday.com. And Joy is a wellness coach at Keenan Flagler Business School, University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I'm so blessed to be able to work alongside both my beautiful daughters at School Match for You, a college counseling firm that I founded in 2010. Good morning, friends. If you're new to the Your College Bound Kid podcast, our mission is to make college knowledge available to all. And we endeavor to cover all of our topics with depth. And we try our best to have gut-wrenching honesty with you. Try not to duck the tough topics. And our philosophy is that there are hundreds of great colleges out there, not 20 or 50. We believe college is a match to be made and not a prize to be won. Now, friends, I'm coming to you from the Atlantic Ocean today. That's right. Our whole family left Brooklyn yesterday, Sunday night at 8 o'clock for a 7-day cruise to Bermuda. And I'm on the cruise. Now, you may know that my mom is from Bermuda, and she's wanted us to have our family reunion on a cruise for 20 years, and she's 87. So it was now or never to make mom's wishes come true. This will actually be my 7th time going to Bermuda. We used to do family reunions here all the time, especially when my grandmother was alive. So I've come 5 times for family reunions and 2 for admissions travel. When our director of admission found out my mom was from Bermuda, I had Bermuda as my territory in admissions. I know, tough life. So I took 2 recruitment trips there, and one of the highlights for me was speaking at my mom's high school 50 years after she graduated. So I'm not recording this podcast from the ocean. I had to record it a few days in advance. Now, I'm very excited about today's episode, partly because of our content. We'll start out with more wisdom about admissions and enrollment management. I'm talking a lot about early decision from Bob Massa and his 50 years of experience. And then we will continue with our 5 students asking 2 partners of law firms any questions they have about the law. John from New Jersey, Jeff from Seattle. And I don't know about you, but just hearing those 5 students ask questions, I find very inspirational. But I'm also excited today because I have 3 big announcements. And I'm going to go into some depth with these 3 announcements. And then after that, you'll hear from Bob Massa and our lawyers panel. So the first announcement concerns our new listener survey. Friends, our listeners are really stepping up big time and coming through. I mentioned last Monday that in the last week, 80 of you completed our survey. Can you believe that we had more than 80 this week complete the survey? And we're getting such great information about what you like, what you want us to continue doing, what you like us to change. And we're definitely going to use this information to improve your college-bound kid. So I just want to thank everybody so much for participating. The survey closes at the end of September, so we've got 5 weeks left. And as our thank you for participating and helping us, we're going to make the results available to you. I was just talking to Dr. Sarah Sled yesterday. If you missed my interview with Sarah, she was over all surveys at Facebook, Google, Amazon, and Netflix now. I mean, can you get a better resume than that? And so she was saying that she'll prepare a 1-pager of all the key takeaways that we can send to our interviewees and to our prospective interviewees. And that's really going to help us to land some more interviews of amazing guests that we believe you're going to want to hear from. Now, we don't ask for names or emails. I can read the comments. And one thing I have learned from reading the comments is that you really like our roundtables. I didn't realize how much you liked our roundtables. We did a roundtable on the activity section. We did a roundtable on the honor section. So even that it's really hard and challenging to pull together multiple busy people for those formats, I'm determined to see that you get more roundtables in future episodes. Another thing I've learned is that while you all really do like a good interview and you do appreciate it if I ask tough questions, you really like the college spotlights that are not interviews, where there's more editorializing based on feedback on visits. And you're going to see more of those. I just have to make it at least through the middle of November. And friends, you may or may not know this, but July 1 into early November is the busiest time, the busiest 4 months for any college counselor. But I promise you, based on your feedback, you're going to get more of these. In fact, I've already started to work on my first one, a little here, a little there, which will be Texas A&M. Just give me a couple months to get into November. The feedback after a visit version of the College Spotlight takes 7 hours to do the prep, recording, and editing, where the time for the more traditional interview for prep, recording, and editing is 5 hours. So I'm doing more of those interview versions right now until we get through the busy season. And I know it might only seem like, 2 hours. Whoop-de-doo, what's the big deal? But 2 hours is actually a lot for one segment of 1/4 of a podcast when you have a Thursday and a Monday podcast during our busy season. One other thing about this survey, we used to let you send in your questions that you wanted to send us via email. In fact, email is the only way we had questions from a listener before. A listener actually suggested we use SpeakPipe, and we used it and we love it. We like the community feel. In fact, we like the community feel so much hearing your voices, it makes it feel like a whole community is part of a podcast that we only take speakpipe.com/YCBK responses now. That's the only way that you can share a question that we answer on the air. However, there have been some of you that have said, I'm just shy. Even that I can do it anonymously, I'm just shy to leave my voice. And I'll be totally honest, sometimes I felt like a little bit of a jerk for kind of keeping the hard line on, we're only taking questions by SpeakPipe. Like my thinking was, we've had over 500 come in, so people can clearly do it. But I do want to be respectful to the people that are just too shy to hit record and hear their own voice. So there is an option for those individuals, and that is take our survey, because on the survey, it does ask you, like, what topics would you want us to cover? There's an opportunity there to ask a question. So that is another advantage to doing the survey. So will you help us out? Will you help us make your college-bound kid better? Just go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, go to the resources page, and the first thing you'll see is our listener survey. And we also put the link in the show notes. All right, let's get to the second announcement. All three of these announcements are lengthy, but they're all important. Okay. I have gotten to know two attorneys in the DC area, Torito Leonardo and her husband, Chris Leonardo. And I have the utmost respect for both of them. They're both listeners to our podcast, regular listeners. They heard our lawyer panel, and Chris and Torito said, one of the things that we love doing as a husband and wife couple is helping future lawyers. If you ever want to do something like you did with Jeff and John, again, we'd be happy to do that. Well, we've already heard from quite a few listeners who have said, boy, my student would have loved to have been a part of something like that. So we're going to do a Q&A session again with two different attorneys in very different aspects of the law. Now, I know some of you are thinking, Stucker, are you going to turn this whole podcast into a lawyer podcast? Because that's not my jam. No, we're not going to air this second session on the podcast. It's going to be webinar style. It's not for parents. It's just for students. Could be high school students, could be college students interested in considering law careers. Or it's also even for those who are law curious. Now, I don't want to overpromise, but if we get a really good turnout, we're also open to doing this for other professions that are in high demand. I could very much see us doing one for doctors, engineers, comp sci, and just other high demand professions like business. Just think it could be a really great way for a student to find out a little bit more about a profession. A couple of the students that were part of the panel discussion with John and Jeff came away saying, you know what, corporate law's not for me. I learned enough from that conversation to know corporate law's not for me. And that's really helpful if you can learn that at age 16, 17, 18, 15, or 22. Now, I mentioned Chris and Torito have very different backgrounds. So I'm going to read their backgrounds. I'm only going to do that today. Not going to do that on other segments. But I'm just going to read it today. And then I'll tell you how to go ahead and sign up. All right. Miss Torito Leonardo has dedicated her legal career to advocating on behalf of child victims. She began her career as an assistant district attorney with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office, where she specialized in prosecuting domestic violence crimes, including rape, assault, and child abuse. In 2004, Ms. Torito Leonardo joined the Criminal Division of the United States Department of Justice in the Child Exploitation and Obscenity section. As a senior trial attorney, she has represented the department with respect to complex and multi-targeted investigations and prosecutions involving the production and distribution of child pornography, trafficking of children for commercial sexual exploitation in both domestic and international parental kidnapping cases. She has tried numerous cases involving the exploitation of children, including one of the first federal sex trafficking of minors cases resulting in a defendant's sentence to a mandatory term of life imprisonment. Ms. Torito Leonardo regularly provides training and guidance to both U.S. and foreign law enforcement and members of the judiciary on issues related to human trafficking and child exploitation. She has received the Justice Department's Distinguished Service Award and the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Core Value Award, and has twice received the DOJ's Award for Outstanding Advocacy for Protecting Citizens from Online Crime. So, fascinating background. Boy, that sounds like that would be hard to read those briefs and be immersed in that, but somebody's got to do it. So, hands off to Torito for being in the trenches and being an advocate for our kids and all sex crimes. So, if that sounds like that might be of interest to you, parents, tell your students, high school or college, that they're going to want to sign up. And I'll tell you how to do that in a second. Now, Chris has a very different background. That's why it's great that you get to hear from both of them. So let me read you Chris's background. For over 25 years, Chris has served as a trusted advisor to clients in high-stakes matters ranging from complex multi-district antitrust litigation to alternative investment management. He has represented over 250 public and private companies in various litigations, both domestically and internationally, and helped them to recover over $3.5 billion. He has also served as deal counsel and a strategic advisor to investment companies, hedge funds, credit unions, alternative asset managers, and other related market participants, companies, law firms, specialty insurance companies, in matters involving over $1 billion in litigation and risk transfer agreements. Chris started his career as a prosecutor with the Manhattan District Office, where he investigated and prosecuted crimes ranging from fraud to homicide. He then left public service to join a large law firm in Washington, D.C., where he primarily focused on representing companies as plaintiffs in complex litigation. He later served as outside general counsel to a publicly traded fund with $600 million in public and private assets under management. In 2007, he founded a litigation boutique and served as managing partner for 13 years. During that time, Chris separately founded a consulting company and has for 5 years served as the managing member, where he advised companies on litigation risk, transfer, and affirmative recovery strategies. He later served as co-founder and principal of a division of a company devoted to distressed alternative asset management, and he worked as director of an investment fund with $2 billion, big difference, assets under management. He now leads his firm's litigation risk transfer practice. He's been ranked in Chambers and Law Dragon as one of the leaders in his field. Chris is a first-generation student. He is a graduate of Gettysburg College. He received his law degree from American University and Washington College of Law. His wife, Torito, is a rock star career prosecutor and a competitive figure skater. They have 2 children in high school. So there you go. There are their backgrounds. Now, let me tell you how you sign up if you're interested in your student being a part of this. You just go to the same place to sign up where our listener survey is. You go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, you go to the resources tab, and look for the tab that says Lawyer Q&A on 9/14. And this webinar is going to be from 7 to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, September 14th. So yeah, sign up there and we'll get the information to you. And once again, we're just trying to help the kids. Now, friends, I love our survey and I'm excited about the lawyer panel, but I do feel like I saved the best one for the last. Friends, we are going to have a series of episodes on Your College Bound Kid that I think have potential to be the best episodes we've ever had in our 564 episodes. They're going to air on Mondays. It'll begin on episode 572, which, if I'm doing my math right, I think is September 22nd. And they're going to go to at least 578 and maybe even 580. I'm referring to our case studies episodes. Now, this last Thursday, August 21st, 5 of our parents who are regular Your College Bound Kid listeners and 3 admission officers, Kate Strickland from the University of Colorado, Grace Robertson Lloyd from Grinnell College, and our own Hillary Dickman from Colorado College, they discussed and debated 3 students, Alana Anderson, Alan Landon, and Layla Tufty. Now, these 3 students are applying to a fictitious college named Cascadia College. And the admissions committee, which is comprised of our 5 parents and the 3 admissions professionals, they can only admit 1, deny 1, and waitlist 1. Now, the real reason I'm excited about this series is that we have made the admissions files available for you to read at the same place. Go to yourcollegeboundkid.com, go to the resources tab, and you'll see YCBK case studies. Now, when you go there, you're going to click and you're going to come into a Google form that says case studies link. And in the link, you're going to see a Google link. So you got to click that Google link. That's going to take you out of the form. But you're going to see everything very much simulating like what an admission officer sees when they're making a decision on a student. So it's going to take you to the full applications for Alana, Alan, and Layla. You're going to see their transcripts. You're going to see their recommendations. You're going to see their testing. You're going to see their full Common App. And I promise you that if you read all of these apps carefully and then come back to the Google link and cast your vote, remember, you only get to admit 1, deny 1, and waitlist 1. And you have to put each kid in one of those 3 categories. And then if you listen to the episodes, it's going to be transformational in your understanding of how admissions works. We're going to have an entire episode to hear the committee debate each student, and then an entire episode to hear them vote and decide which one they're selecting, who they decide a waitlist, who did they deny, who did they admit. Now, I've either spoken to or texted all 5 of the parents who participated, and they were gushing in their comments about how much they learned about admissions. And these are people that never miss an episode. So they came in with maybe more of a knowledge of admissions than a lot of people. So once again, if you really want to understand how the sausage is made, I just strongly encourage you not only to listen to these episodes, but to read the admissions files, vote on them. That's what's really going to lead to the rich learning, because when you hear the discussion, you're going to know the context. In fact, you might even want to take notes. Read the files and take notes so that when you hear the discussion, you'll remember your thoughts. This is just the best way I know how to teach you guys admissions. I could do 500 more episodes. I honestly don't know if you would learn admissions as much as you will by actually, reading files, and then you get to be a fly on the wall. Ever wanted to be a fly on the wall in an admissions committee discussion? Well, that's what we're simulating here. You get to be a fly on the wall and to understand how things work. Now, I won't be surprised if these are our most listened to episodes, and partly because of how word is going to spread. And I'm asking you to do this. If you have a friend, maybe at your child's school, and maybe you talk to about admissions sometimes, maybe they don't listen to Your College Bound Kid. Tell them about this. This is the one time they should listen. They should go read the files, cast their vote, and listen to these episodes. You get to be a fly on the wall and understand how colleges put everything together. Super excited about that. All right, enough about our announcements. Let's hear from Bob Massa.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, Bob Massa has over 50 years of experience in admissions and enrollment management and consulting. And so in this segment, Bob talks about increasing yield and what colleges can do to increase their yield for their admitted students. And we also talk about the pros and cons of applying early decision. Listen and enjoy. Bob, I know you one of the roles in your current consulting company is advising presidents on admissions related um, guidance and advice. What are some of the things you frequently find yourself needing to explain to presidents that they're way up in the ivory tower, right? They're not feet on the ground. And what are some things you're frequently finding you're needing to explain to them that they just may not, fully
Uh,
comprehend?
Yeah, actually, most of the presidents that we work with have a pretty solid understanding
Mm-hmm.
of how admissions works and how important it is. Most of our work with presidents really goes to institutional branding and making certain that everyone on campus understands what our mission is, what our values are, and how we live those on a daily basis. Because all too often, and this isn't just presidents. I mean, it's boards and senior officers as well. Think, I'll stay in my lane. This is what I'm supposed to do. I'm the fundraiser. I'm the chief financial officer. I'm the chief enrollment officer. I'm the chief student affairs officer, and we stay in our lanes. And sure, we talk amongst ourselves, but mostly, we just do what our job description says. And in point of fact, as I illustrated before, it's important that everyone on campus considers themselves an admissions officer, a student recruiter. I got to tell you, when I was at Dickinson, the physical plant guys took enormous pride in how the campus looked. And they were able to really talk to parents and students on on a tour. When they were tending the grounds, that reflected the mission of the institution, because the head of campus operations and I, and the marketing person who reported to me, were all on the same page. So I think presidents have a role here to make sure that their senior officers understand that, and that everyone who reports to those senior officers understands that, and is open, is service oriented, is proud to work at the institution. Those are the kinds of things that we talk about. We don't really get in with presidents. We don't get into the nitty gritty unless they ask.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we write the reports when we do the audits. We write the reports, and the president gets the reports, so they can see, where an admissions office might be falling down in terms of prospect management, for example, or collaboration with marketing, or how financial aid fits into all of that. So they'll see that from the report standpoint. But our work with presidents is really at a much higher level.
So let's say you're meeting with the VP of enrollment, dean of admission, director, the whole team, senior team, and they say our problem is not prospects. Our problem is yield. We can get people to reach out, maybe even apply, but our conversion's terrible. We're getting 1 out of 8, 1 out of 8, 1 out of 10, and those numbers are real out there. Those are not unrealistic numbers in regular admission, right? Those are very real numbers.
That's right.
What are some of the things that you find schools are not doing that they could be doing? I mean, you've already mentioned an important one, which is concentrate on your engaged people in the pipeline, right?
Yeah.
But besides that, what's another thing that you find you're telling them?
And this is a lot easier for smaller institutions to do than it would be for, NYU, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But and this goes along with the first thing, which is concentrating on those who have a real chance of enrolling, and that's developing relationships.
Mm-hmm.
And whether those relationships are with the student individually, with the parent, with the college counselor, you don't want to be intrusive, obviously, as an admissions officer, but you you want to get personal. You want to treat them with, how can I say this? What Angel Perez came out with something not too long ago about hospitality. He was talking about, right? Angel, of course, is the CEO of the National Association of College Admissions Counseling, and himself a chief enrollment officer and admission officer before he came to that position several years ago. And he talks about treating your prospective students in a hospitable way, making them feel open and welcome. And that's not only the responsibility of the admission officer, but use student ambassadors to do that, and particularly through social media, which is something that we didn't have 30 years ago, or 20 years ago for that.
Yeah.
So that would be probably my primary advice. Look, it's so competitive out there, and we all know as college chief admissions officers that kids are applying to. I mean, I cheer when they're only applying to 8 colleges. I mean, a lot of them are applying to double digits, as you well know, and it's like, okay, so what if they get into half of them? I still have a 1 in 8 chance if they're applying to 16 schools of getting the kid, and you just have to put your best foot forward. And what I want to get away with, or get away from rather, is buying the students. Well, I'll come for an additional $5,000, because if that's all that's making you move to my institution versus another, that's the wrong reason. I'm sorry, it just is. If you're coming here because we're the best deal in town, as opposed to a place that you really want to be, I don't know that you're going to be happy here. So, what is it worth to you as a parent in the long run? Now, obviously, if institution A and institution B are pretty close, and institution B, if you send your kid there, you could save 85,000 over 4 years. I mean, that's kind of hard to turn down, right? But A and B have to be pretty close, and your kid can be happy at either one, and getting a great education at either one. If they're far apart, then if it's institution A versus institution P, as in Paul, maybe it is worth the 85,000 to send them to A. I don't know. That's a family decision. That's not
right.
That's something the family has to decide.
Well, this is why recruiting for early decision has become such an enormous trend.
Yes.
And it's nothing new. It started a long time ago as one of the very early enrollment management techniques, and as colleges tried to elevate their standing in the rankings, and lower their admit rates,
right,
and better their yield. Colleges can control their yield through early decision and the wait list. And that's escalated to an enormous extent. And a lot of families, when they come to a college counselor, the first thing they say is one of our priorities is figuring out where to apply early decision. And it does put the cart before the horse, but you know what? I don't challenge it anymore. I think it's clearly beneficial to the student in terms of getting into college, but whether it's beneficial to finding that the best match, remains to be seen.
Yeah, and
probably handle that a little different, Susan, because I'll first say, let's even see if the school even has ED, the schools that you like, right? Because
of course,
I was good. Michigan was always an example, but now that's changed, right?
So much for that.
Yeah, and then I have to, you have to go over that financial piece with the family, because, one of the changes I've seen since I first started working with you, Susan, early 2002, 2003. Schools were not as explicit about the ED advantage. They used to be a lot more subtle. They're just coming right out and saying it really clearly now. But at the same time, hey, your chances are better. But at the same time, there's that other piece that we just talked about, that, Andy Strickland and I recently talked about, which the word is out now that colleges aren't always leading with their best offer.
Oh.
So it really puts that dilemma in the minds of families, right? Because just because you say you meet full demonstrated need, that's not, you still could be leaving $100,000 or more on the table. And so this is some of the more complicated counseling that we do with families. It's a lot of things to consider, and certainly the finances, because There's $100,000 is literally nothing to some families, and it's everything to somebody else.
I think also, the pundits who are out there who are really anti-early decision have that position for exactly that reason that students may be being shortchanged in terms of finances if they go early. And so my advice to parents has always been this: if as a parent you say, look, this is how much I have to spend on your education, and you want to go early to this college, fine. If they give you that amount, the difference between what I think I can afford and what it costs, or if they come close to giving you that amount, then that's fine. I don't care what other schools might offer you. Other schools might offer you something that will make it less expensive for me. I don't care about that. This is how much I have. If school A offers that to you, fine. Go early decision. If a parent has that attitude, then early decision is fine, because students can always pull out of early decision if they don't get the financial aid that they need, and I don't think colleges do a good job of explaining that. But on the other hand, if a parent says, I don't see a huge difference between A, B, and C here. So I don't want to commit financially until I see what B and C have to offer. If that's your attitude as a parent, and that's fine that you have that attitude, then early decision is not for you, for your child. That's how I have presented it in the past. Whether that resonates or not, I don't know, but I think it's the truth.
The challenge is for people that aren't getting a lot of counsel. Like one of the families I'm working with in California just recently told me that their daughter went to a presentation with Miami, fell in love with it, and Miami was making it perfectly clear your better chance is going to be with ED. So they went ahead and applied ED. They didn't even think for one moment they wouldn't get money, and now we're on the hook for $95K. A lot of families just assume, I don't think I can pay that amount. And I'm sure the college knows that. Now, Susan and I are counseling. We'll catch that and we'll address that. We'll incorporate that. But think of all the people out there that aren't getting that type of, one-on-one attention. That's what makes that tricky. Bob, one thing I've noticed, I even did a whole episode on this, a real surge of schools, even selective schools, the Bowdens, the Swarthmores, sending kids I'm working with multiple emails, really encouraging them to interview. They'll say, the students will say to me, I've got like 3 or 4 emails. Like, do you want to interview? Do you want to interview? And it feels to me like that's part of what you were talking about earlier about getting personal.
Yep.
And it's usually like a senior fellow. It's usually like a student that's maybe worked for 3 years in the admission office. And just that alone allows me to feel some of the anxiety. Because, when you network with the women's colleges, they've always treated everybody so precious. I'll meet you at a Starbucks for everybody. And, they'll spend 30, 45 minutes. And you can see that trickling down to more selective schools. And that feels like one of the ways I'm seeing on, feet on the ground, an application of you saying, you got to build relationships. You got to get more personal. These were schools that didn't, they didn't do interviews like this, or they didn't aggressively recruit for them.
Well, I think the point is that even those at the top of the food chain, if you pardon that analogy, are feeling the pinch.
Yeah.
Financially and in terms of demand. And so, yeah, and also, you have to realize, parents have to realize that, if you're a Swarthmore, you're competing against Pomona and Williams,
Correct.
and Amherst. You're not necessarily
and Ivies.
Brown,
yeah. Now they have a lot of Ivy overlap.
And you're not competing against some really great liberal arts colleges like Dickinson and Lafayette and Bucknell, as much as you are at that level. And at that level, the competition is just as fierce as it is at any other level that's competing within its level, if you will, if that makes sense.
Well, this is a generation of kids, too, who, in terms of mental health, do not feel seen. They feel recognized when they meet whatever the standards are, of achievement that they're involved with, right? That they are seen, they are recognized, they are honored when they achieve a certain status. But the uptick in mental health issues, the research shows at least that kids don't feel seen for who they are at their core, in their hearts, what they're bringing to the world. So when a college actually acts like they care about that, where a college looks at a prospect and says, I see you, I value you, I see how you as a human being have something to offer, not just the college, but the world. Mm-hmm. And there are some institutions that are so mission driven, they've always done this. But there are a lot that actually, as the competition has increased and enrollment management has become such a big deal, they have distanced themselves from the high school students because first of all, they don't see the return for that investment really in their process. But they don't want to get up close and personal, right? They might ask a question on their application supplement about something personal. But a lot of times that feels like a pretense. So when a college actually, maybe it's visiting the high school, maybe it's that outreach of saying, Mark, like you just said, I'd really like to meet with you on Zoom or when I'm in the area. And I tell kids to press for that level of contact, to see if it's there for them in terms of what a college is willing to do. Because I think it tells the child, something about the college's priorities. Some schools, they don't budget for it. They don't care about it. The admissions people are managing territories. They're not managing individual relationships. And if students don't ask for it, they may not get it. But it's that concept of being seen and valued that I find students jump out of their skin when that happens. And it can elevate a college's appeal because kids assume that that's a reflection of what they're going to experience when they're on that campus. Right?
That's exactly right. And that's why it's so important for admissions people not to think of themselves primarily as salespeople, but to think of themselves as educators.
That's right.
And one of the, there are a lot of institutions that have regional reps that, so you're an East Coast college, you have somebody located out in California, that's fine, but they're not on the campus.
Right. Yeah.
They don't see the culture as a regular basis. And so I think that and there's some great people that have been regional reps, and I've employed some of them, but I think that's a weakness in that in that paradigm.
Friends, this concludes this segment of my interview with Susan with Bob Massa, but he's back next week, so I hope you'll join us. Okay, friends, let's transition to hearing our students ask attorneys questions about being a lawyer. Now, this is the last segment with our students, but I will have one final segment with just me and Jeff and John asking some follow-up questions that I have.
And now this week's interview with a special guest.
Friends, we continue with three aspiring lawyers who are rising seniors: Jack from New York, Martina from Pennsylvania, Sonia from North Carolina, asking questions to our two law school partners, John from New Jersey, who's a partner in a big law firm, Jeff from Seattle, who started his own public law firm. The three rising seniors are joined by Eileen, a college junior who was in California, and Satchel, who was about to start his second year at Boston University in law school. Jackson?
So, Satchel, I was wondering how law school compared to what you thought it would be, what just the average person would think it was. Is it harder? Is it easier? Would you give yourself any advice before, coming there?
My biggest piece of advice is not to have any expectation on what law school is going to be like, because it just is completely unpredictable. I had gotten a sense. I always thought law school was kind of like how TV shows were, where it was you get cold called every single day and the professor yells at you if you get a question wrong. And it's not even close to like that. Like that does exist for certain, professors who are a little bit more aggressive. But all of my law school classes were extremely like lighthearted, very nice professors, very nice people. The biggest surprise that I had in law school was just kind of how nice everybody was. I always thought it was going to be a very cutthroat, everybody competing for the same thing. But you realize quickly through law school that everybody wants something completely different, and there are enough spots for everybody. I was interested in big law. I had friends who were interested more in the government route, and other friends who were like more interested in like public interest or in-house opportunities. And we all meshed because we all realized that we were all competing for different things, and that one opportunity that I got was not going to be taken away from somebody else. It was a really nice community. I've loved every single day about law school. I would say the biggest thing that I would tell myself if I could go back is take some time to myself and not just think about law school 24/7 every day of the week. I would give the same advice right now when it comes to like admissions or really anything that's stressful right now. Take some personal days off. I was right before this call, I was talking about how my second semester, I basically lived in the library and I had a suit in my locker every single day because I was going to like firm events or like grabbing coffee with attorneys. And then they got to a week where I was like, I could not do this anymore. And for 2 to 3 hours, I was like, oh, I need to do this. Like, I won't get a job if I don't. And then I realized that if I took a day off, a week off, that was going to be enough of a recharge to get me through the next weeks, and I'd be a better version of myself doing that. So I'd definitely say take some time off, breathe, remember that, you are you and you can't be anybody else. Stay grounded, keep a tight-knit community around you, and get sleep. That's my actually number one piece of advice. Get your sleep.
Can I hop in there, Jackson, while you didn't direct that to us? I alluded to this, I think, earlier on, and I actually know this is controversial because not all lawyers agree with me. When you're in law school, after your first year, generally speaking, your first year will be dictated to you. After your first year, take classes of interest to you. Do things that are intellectually stimulating. If that means you really want to learn about evidence, take evidence. I didn't really want to learn about evidence. I didn't take evidence. Right? I took 2 semesters of transnational justice with Alex Parade, who is the vice president of the South African Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I took 2 semesters with Ron Goldstock, who was one of the lead mob busters in teaching organized crime control in law school. I took a semester of law and philosophy with Thomas Nagel, arguably America's greatest philosopher. Those were classes that were really of interest to me. They would bear no relation to anything I was seeking to do in the future in any way whatsoever. But kind of consistent with Satchel's point, what it did allow me to do was not be super duper focused on law school. It allowed me to pursue interests that were part of the law, but were not in furtherance of getting a job and doing things a certain way. And I think having those, other than in particular the law and philosophy final, which I can still recall, other than that, those were wonderful opportunities to step away while still being in the environment.
Sonia.
What areas of law do you think will have the most growth in the future?
Pass.
Okay. One area I will focus on in particular, cybersecurity and privacy. Those 2 areas, which are similar but also dissimilar, we've seen at the firm a massive growth in that. That will continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It can't get smaller between the increasing level of privacy laws at the state level, nationally, and to Martina's point, internationally with European GDPR, for example. But on the cybersecurity front, that's going to become more and more and more prevalent and important as the robots take over more and more of our lives.
I can tell you where there's already a shortage of lawyers, and it's on the criminal side of things. We do not have enough prosecutors, and we do not have enough defense attorneys, particularly public defenders. And it's for obvious reasons. They don't get paid enough. But if you can find a way to get through law school without having a lot of debt, and if those areas interest you, you will have plenty of work.
And a ton of real-world experience immediately. You go to a lot of these large firms, depending on what you're doing, you're kind of behind a computer screen the entire time. You get a job on the front lines like that, as Jeff is saying, the wealth of experience you'll get in even a short period of time can't be measured in dollars by any stretch of the imagination.
Satchel.
I would say, what is the single best piece of advice that you've gotten just throughout your legal career?
Can I give a slightly
Yeah.
humorous one?
Sure.
And that'll give Jeff a chance to think about it. Because I work with contracts on a regular basis. I remember as a junior associate, one of the partners for whom I was working at the time said, our client, and our client was really representation of all similarly situated parties in the industry, will never actually do what the contract says. Your job as a lawyer in this space is try to get the contract as close to what they do as what they're going to do, regardless of what the contract says. So it wasn't, right, it was sort of a very practical thing, which is a contract is a living, breathing thing on its own, and it represents a series of promises, but those promises might or might not actually relate to what's going on in the real world, and understand that distinction and try to bring those two together.
Mine would be when I was a pretty young lawyer, I was trying to figure out how to style a motion to ask for a particular thing from the judge. And I couldn't figure out what box it belonged in. And somebody that I was working with at the time said, just title the motion what it is that you are asking for. Motion for this is what I want, right? And I thought it had to be this, it had to fit perfectly in this box. And that sort of was a revelation for me when I learned that you just go to the judge and you ask for what you want. And then you try to explain to the judge why the judge should give you what you want. And you don't worry so much about, which box it fits in perfectly.
Which, by the way, is probably the single best life lesson anybody will hear on this podcast today, which is you have to advocate for yourself, you have to think about what you want, and you have to effectively communicate what you want. But it starts with the willingness to advocate for yourself. Because if you don't do that, nobody else is going to do it for you.
Awesome. Martina.
Okay, so with the law that's changing and continuously changing and almost new Supreme Court cases, etc., how do you keep up with it? I know there's oye.org, for example, that details all Supreme Court cases. Do you have specific newspapers that you subscribe to, or websites that you use to just keep up to date, what's going on, know what to expect for your specific kinds of laws and in general?
There's if you're just interested in the Supreme Court, there's a great podcast if you're willing to take along with it the left of center ideology, and I will come back with the name of it in just 1 second.
While Jeff's looking that up, Martina, what I'd say is as you get more experienced, you're focusing on the areas that are relevant to your professional life. And when you start to compartmentalize and shrink that down, while it's not necessarily easier, it is far easier to look at A through C than A through 4 times of X's over to infinity. So in my world, there are a couple of trade magazines and publications that I look at on a regular basis. If there's a law that is passed that is germane to the work we're doing, I'll look at it, or associates will look at it, and we'll sit and talk about it. And at a firm like ours with 400 lawyers, we have lots of different practices. Other lawyers doing other things that are tangential to my world will invariably write about changes. So with the recent tax bill, our tax team put out a very big publication or set of publications talking about different facets of the tax law that might be relevant to our clients. So my first start with the tax bill is to read what my partners and the associates in the tax group are saying about it before I'm going to dig in myself, because they are the experts. They know what they're doing, and they know how to communicate that effectively, much better than I could dig into tax provisions and figure it out myself.
The podcast is called Strict Scrutiny. It's really well done. It is from the left, which probably most of you are anyway. But if you're interested in the Supreme Court, that's a great listen.
Jackson?
So I'd like to get really everyone's input on this. What is the best piece of writing advice you have? For me, it was write like you're making a timeline. So this comes, this causes this causes the next thing. Anyone's free to answer this.
Writing advice.
So here, I'll give you a piece of advice that I think is more attuned to the college admissions essay process, but is also how I think, which is write how you speak. And that's not necessarily appropriate if you've got to write prose in an English class or something like that. But if you can pick up what you've done and read it and it sounds like you, then you've done an effective job of communicating. I remember having a conversation with one of my litigation partners years ago, and she said, I will never, ever type a brief. I will take a dictaphone and I will read the brief into the dictaphone to ultimately be dictated by dictating it and be then copied thereafter either by a person or by technology. Because if I can't say it cleanly and clearly and communicate it effectively, then I can't do that in front of a judge. And so I need to be able to do that here with it in front of my face recording it, and it will come out in a way that anybody reading it will understand it.
I would just say make sure you're giving yourself time because the first drafts are not going to be good, and editing is where the magic happens. So make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time for editing. And just in general, try to know what you want to say before you get started, so that you're just not filling pages to fill pages. Just know what you want to say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Outline, identify the mission, the objective. Was that Satchel raising a hand? Or
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I have a funny story about this. So for my internship, I write like these really big legal brief memos on like these issues, and I had one that I had to do in like a week, and it turned out to be 20 pages, and I was like, oh my god, I think this is so great, blah blah blah. So I emailed it to the guy who I needed to send it to. He was like, this is absolutely great, but I need this to be 10 pages shorter. And I was like, I have no clue how I'm going to turn this 20-page thing into 10 pages, like at all. And I thought he was crazy. I was like, there's just no way this is possible. And then he sat down with me and we went line by line. And he was like, do you need this sentence? Do you need this sentence? Do you need this sentence? And I was like, all right. Then it got it to 12 pages. So the biggest piece of advice, be concise and be intentional. If every sentence and whatever you're writing doesn't serve like a real purpose, then it shouldn't be in there.
There you go. That's your college admissions Common App essay tip right there.
All right, we have time for two more, Sonia and Eileen, and then we're going to call it a night.
I don't have any more.
Eileen, you got two for us?
I have one.
Go ahead.
So I would say, as a junior right now, I feel that the major topic of conversation is networking, building that kind of resume, that transcript, and getting prepared for internships. How is it for students currently in my age range? Is networking something so essential for the legal field currently?
I think it really depends on what kind of law you want to practice. If you want to practice criminal law, absolutely not. Because you can be a prosecutor without networking. You can be a public defender without networking. If you want to be a big-time white-collar defender, you're going to need to network. Now, I should say, you have to, it always helps to know people to get any job. So I don't want to completely undersell networking for those areas. But there are some areas where if you need a book of business, if you're going into private practice and you're going to have clients, your own clients, that's where the networking really comes into play. And I guess I would just think of networking as not so much, well, it is what it is. It's about relationships. I think when people use the word networking, it sort of under describes what it really is. You want to cultivate meaningful relationships with people. And that's where clients ultimately end up coming from.
Jeff, could not possibly agree with you more. In fact, the comment I was going to make was I hate the word networking. I think of this as relationship building. Some of my best and longest term clients are friends, visited their houses, know their kids, all of those kind of things, even in big law. And it's incredibly, incredibly important. You need to be connecting on a human level with people. If you are merely thinking of people as a means to an end, you will get nowhere, nor should you get anywhere, because that's not how you should treat people.
All right, I'm going to ask a question that something I've talked with Jackson about. So, any advice for someone who wants to be a judge? Because Jackson would like to be a judge. Any advice for someone who aspires to be a judge?
Oh, that's where networking really matters. I'm not even joking. That is where you need to know people at a very high level to get those jobs. Because most judges are initially appointed, and then in states that elect their judges, you get reelected after the appointment. But getting that judicial appointment is very heavily dependent on relationships, I think.
Yeah, I agree with Jeff wholeheartedly there. I can't speak to every state, but in my experience, being at a firm that has produced judges or knows judges very well is likely to continue to produce judges or know judges very well, A. And B, a lot of times when judges start, you're not doing the sexiest work in the world. So you can't just assume you're going to become, the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States. You're not replacing John Roberts in X number of years, right? Like, that's not realistic. You're probably going to, in New Jersey, I think you like start in family court. And you kind of work your way through different levels and make your way up or over or out or stay or whatever it is. And just be prepared to find the opportunity and take it regardless of what it is, because it may not be the perfect opportunity, but if it's the one you have, then it is the perfect opportunity.
And my other advice would be don't be a judge.
On advice of counsel, I refuse to answer, and the basis of my answer may tend to incriminate me.
Hey, I work for a judge right now. Judges are great people, by the way. Just want you to know.
Oh, I love judges. I just feel sorry for them.
That's funny.
I'm going to put my Eileen hat on here. Any advice for someone who's interested in immigration law?
Immigration law.
Yeah, I don't know, Jeff, if you have any. We don't have any immigration lawyers. What I will say is probably true about immigration law, and I know it's true about family law. The legal practices that tug at the heartstrings are incredibly, incredibly, incredibly psychically difficult practices. You need to be prepared for dealing with human beings in their absolute worst of all scenarios. That means there will be incredible highs, but there will also be incredible lows. And you have to understand that that's really unique to a very small subset of the practice of law. And I have to imagine immigration is one of those, just like family law would be.
I think there's sort of, when I think of immigration law, I think of two kinds of law. There's the Amazon Microsoft immigration law, where they're bringing high-tech jobs in. That's one way to do it. That's sort of corporate immigration law. And then there's the sort of more sort of civil rights type of immigration law. They're very, very different, I think. And so just be aware of that difference. And if you want to do the latter, stay out of debt.
How about a round of applause for our attorneys? I think you guys were great. Thank you guys so much. This was awesome. And our students who had amazing questions. And thank you so much. And this will run throughout August, and it'll help a lot of people. So thank you guys so much. It's really great having you here.
Absolutely.
Friends, this concludes this part of our panel of students asking questions to partners at law firms. Hope you'll join us next week for the next segment. On Monday's episode, Vince and I will discuss the decision of Columbia and Brown to reach a settlement with the Trump administration. I will read my fourth article from the Chronicle about what to do about the money problem that every college is facing. And we'll hear from somebody on the financial side at Swarthmore College. We'll have the final part of my interview with Peg Keogh, Chief Academic Officer at College Aid Pro, helping us to understand the FAFSA and the CSS profile, which, by the way, go live in about 5 weeks. And we will have part 3 of 4 of my interview with Dr. Raymond Blakely, who is helping us to understand the University of Texas at Austin. Friends, I came across a new quote this week. A lot of you may be familiar with a very popular book, sold millions of copies. It's by Steve Covey, and it's called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Well, one of the things Covey talks about in his book is the difference between being efficient, which is not necessarily the same as being effective. So this is what Covey says. You can be highly skilled at managing tasks, systems, and processes, climbing the ladder quickly. But if the ladder itself is leaning against the wrong wall, then all your effort won't get you where you really want to go. Think about that, because it's deep. See you on Thursday, friends. And that's our show. A big thank you to you, our listeners, for tuning in this week. If you find this podcast helpful, please follow us and you will get every single episode as soon as they are released. If you want to support our podcast, you can click the share button and send it to your friends and acquaintances. You can say positive things about your college-bound kid on your social media feed. And you can help us stay commercial-free and pay our staff by donating on the yourcollegeboundkid website. You can write a review for us on Apple or Spotify. And if you have a question or a recommendation, just go to speakpipe.com/YCBK, hit the orange button, and speak. We will do our best to get your question in your own voice on an upcoming episode. I am the producer of the podcast, and I live in Metro Atlanta. We have a fantastic team that has over 200 years of admissions and counseling experience. Shout out to our co-hosts, Dr. Lisa Ruff in North Carolina, Susan Tree in Pennsylvania, Vince Garcia in California, Julia Esquivel in Massachusetts, Linda Depker in Missouri, Andy Strickler, the Chief Enrollment Officer at Connecticut College, New London, Connecticut, Hillary Dickman, an Admission Officer at Colorado College in Colorado Springs, and our International Admissions Expert, Kevin Newton in Dallas, Texas. Our sensational sound engineer is Nemanja Motvich. Our amazing music is from Victor Allen Weeks. Marketing designs from Kimberly Bloss. Our reliable webmaster is Stalionis Dimitru. Website updates are done by Joyce Stucker. Our image editor is Vlad Honchar. If you want to have a coaching session with me, just text me at 404-664-4340. If you want to reach someone else on our team, all of our bios with contact info can be found at yourcollegeboundkid.com under the About YCBK tab. If you want to get our free monthly YCBK newsletter, YCBK Plus, it is also under the About YCBK tab. If you want to see our recommended books and websites, they are on our website under the Resources tab. While you're on our website, check out our hundreds of interviews in their entirety. Check out our college spotlights, our blog, and our upcoming events. We think of you as our listening family, and we look forward to meeting with you every single Monday and every single Thursday.